Chair, we're good to go.
Okay, 7:03, and I will bring this planning commission meeting to order. It's Tuesday, September 8th. May I have a roll call, please? Well, I'll do a, wait, Vice Chair Farsan. Right, you're muted. Nope, you're muted.
Can you hear me
There you go.
now?
Yes.
Okay, going through systems. Present, thank you.
Commissioner Heising,
Present.
Commissioner Labange,
Present.
Commissioner Maggio,
Present.
Commissioner Mason,
Present.
and Commissioner Radnich.
Present.
And I'm Commissioner Stern, present. Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second,
That was a motion by Commissioner Maggio, second by Commissioner Heising. Okay, and we'll take a vote. Vice Chair Farsan,
aye.
Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Labange,
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio,
Aye.
Commissioner Mason,
Aye.
Commissioner Radnich,
Aye.
and Commissioner Sturm, aye. Thank you. Do we have any public comments for items not on the agenda tonight?
If there are public comments or you wish to make a public comment on an item that's not on the agenda, please go ahead and use the raise your hand function now at the bottom of your screen, or press *9 if you're on a phone. C1, promoting Rory Snyder to join the meeting and offer public comments. Rory Snyder, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm back on. Rory Snyder.
Correct. Do you have a item, commentary on any public comment to offer not on an agenda item?
No, not Okay, yet. I'm back on. Rory Snyder.
Correct. Do you have a item,
Feedback.
commentary on any public comment to offer not on an agenda item?
No, not okay, yet. I'm back on. Rory Snyder.
Correct. Do you have a item? So, Mr. Snyder, if you're seeking a comment on an item that's on the agenda, I'll go ahead and put you back as an attendee for the time being. And when that item comes up, then you can raise your hand to offer your comment. There are no additional hands raised, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so at this time, I'll take a motion to adopt the consent calendar. If no one has any revisions to it, they'd like to propose.
I have a couple items I noticed in the minutes. On the June 1st, the first batch of minutes, there seemed to be like a missing page between the Del Santo item and the beginning of the Lafayette Circle item. So, or maybe it was just a paragraph or two. It appeared to be missing. And I don't know if that's just inadvertent error by the clerk or somehow in the scanning of the item. And then on June 30th, the clerk had a couple locations highlighted, and I think I know what it is she was, I think I know the correct answer. On page 12 of 64, line 15, it's PEMS data, PEMS. And then line 17 of page 14 of 64, it's synchro analysis, not syncer analysis. So I thought I'd just offer that just for clarification and edits.
Thank you, Commissioner Heising. That's
And with that, I'll move the item.
Okay. Okay, so motion to approve the consent calendar with the revisions Commissioner Heising pointed out. Do I have a second?
So moved. Oh, second.
Second by Commissioner Maggio. We'll take a vote. Vice Chair Farsan,
Aye.
Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Labange,
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio,
Aye.
Commissioner Mason,
Aye.
Commissioner Radnich. Aye. And Commissioner Sturm. Aye. Okay, we are on to continued public hearings. We're on item 6A, request for reapproval of phase 1 in conformance with condition of approval number 4 for hillside development permit 0317 with variant 0217, tree permit 617, Tack and Cindy Tam R20 zoning. We are ready for a staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. The item before you this evening is a request for a new single-family residence at 777 Tanglewood Drive. So just to orient you a little bit, this is on Tanglewood Drive off of Moraga Road near the intersection of Hanlon Road. And this map over here is the context map, which should also be in your project plans, Tanglewood, and then this is the subject site. A little bit of background and timeline. In 2016, the application was submitted, it was reviewed and ultimately expired prior to action being taken due to Permit Streamlining Act requirements. In 2017, the applicant submitted resubmitted the application for phase 1. Ultimately, that was approved subject to conditions. And then in 2018, submitted an application for phase 2. That ultimately was deemed incomplete in order to comply with conditions of approval for phase 1. So during 2018 to 2020, the applicant did work diligently to obtain approval from Department of Fish and Wildlife, as well as the city engineer for the creek setback exception. During that time frame, the phase 1 approval expired. And so that's where the applicant is now looking for reapproval of phase 1, given our 2-year time frame for approval of any project, and then also conformance with condition of approval number 4 from the phase 1, which essentially was seeking, making sure that any adjustments from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, if there were any, that it was still conforming with phase 1. So the current project is still single family residential. They're proposing 2,449 square feet. 28.1 is what's labeled on the plans. They are not requesting any setback variances. There is a 2-car garage and then 10 trees to be removed. There was some confusion about tree removal. And I think that they had previously proposed to remove 16, but ultimately through the phase 1 process, it was reduced down to 10. There was also some public comment that came in about the projects, very specifically about the trees. So if you look at condition number 3 on the phase 1 approval, it does indicate that the footprint may be modified by a design review commission in order to protect additional trees. And so mitigation trees are to be established sort of at phase 2, once the final number of trees would be calculated, or the final number of trees to be removed would be understood, and then the proper mitigation would be calculated. And the mitigation measures, it talks about it being in full mitigation measures as it relates to the tree ordinance in the mitigated negative declaration that was adopted. In terms of buildability, the lot was established in 1968, and then its legality was confirmed with a certificate of compliance in 2014. There were some safety concerns. There's a stopping distance, which is based on the existing 15 miles per hour sign that's posted in the area. And that was reviewed at phase 1 and established by the city engineer as acceptable and safe. And then in terms of the creek setback exception was approved by City Council on June 25th, 2018. And then a streambed alteration permit was issued by Department of Fish and Wildlife on July 18th, 2019. So this evening, staff is asking the Planning Commission to adopt Planning Commission Resolution 2020-18 in order to reapprove phase 1, siting and massing, and then find the phase 2 application in conformance with phase 1, which ultimately means it would go to the Design Review Commission for final action. I'm available for questions if you have any.
Any questions for staff? Okay, I have a question. Sarah, is there any difference between a reapproval and a de novo hearing?
So essentially, it is a de novo hearing. You still have to make the findings. I think something that you want to consider when making your decision is if the circumstances surrounding the project have changed. Staff does not believe that they have. So in terms of the code requirements, the general plan is still the same, the zoning is still the same, the site constraints, site circumstances are all still the same. And so if you decide not to make the same findings, you would need to be very explicit about which findings you could not make and why.
Okay, thank you. And then you clarified that it's 10 trees being removed. When I looked at the plan, I was counting 12. Could you pull the plan up and show us?
Sure. So, and ultimately it was 10 that was approved by the Planning Commission with also those conditions that allow for the adjustments, but for lesser trees to be removed. So I can pull up the plans for sure, but the applicant would need to speak to the number of trees.
Okay, I can ask the applicant when they're presenting. That probably makes more sense. And then the arborist report was not included in our packet, so I asked Jonathan to send it to me, and he sent it to me, but I didn't have a chance to look all the way through it. One thing that struck me when I went out to the site, and I did see the comments about the heavy vines on the trees on the side of the site being proposed for development, having a potential negative impact on the tree health. As a person who's not an arborist, when I went out there, I thought that the side of the site proposed for development looked sort of healthier and more lush, and the vegetation was more dense. And then the other side of the site, the trees are more spread out, and several of them didn't look that healthy to me, like the large oak tree that's sort of in the center of the site. A lot of its branches had broken off or been cut off and not at where you want them to cut, it had some of the signs that I've heard from our arborists that are not good. So are you able to speak to that, since we didn't get a chance to review the whole arborist report? Or is that a question for the applicant as well?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have a comment on that.
Okay. Okay. Anybody come up with questions for staff? Okay. So we will so the applicant has 10 minutes to present. We're ready for that presentation.
Mike Masano is joining. I believe he's the architect for the project.
Good evening. This is Mike Masano with Ward Young Architects. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, as Sarah had outlined, the major reason for this is that I think it was Gina Telovich, the commissioner back then, wanted to make sure, because we had gone through several iterations of planning commission meetings and revisions, that some of the conditions of approval were to get a creekside setback approval, as well as have Department of Fish and Wildlife review and approve this. So she wanted to make sure that if there was anything that came up during those two reviews that affected the envelope, she wanted this current planning commission review to happen. So I can say that we did receive the approval for the creekside setback, as well as the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and neither of them had any effect on the footprint, location, siding, or mass of the house. As to the trees, I think that there was one additional tree on the south side of the development that was fairly close to the retaining wall. And I think that after all was said and done for the excavation of the retaining wall, that tree would be have to be removed. It just wouldn't survive it. But other than that, we didn't add any trees due to footprint location or that concern. Now, Commissioner Sturm asked about the location of the trees and whatnot. Ironically, sometimes with the vines up there, it can make the trees look a little bit healthier than they actually are. John Traverso, our arborist, is very good at the oaks. And yeah, the lot itself has just been, I don't want to say neglected, but there's been nobody there to maintain it. So with the removal of the vines and the pruning of the trees, that can really help to the health of the trees. As far as the location, if you look at the constraint maps, there's setbacks, slope, trees. There's a lot of different constraints, and there's a composite constraint that you can see. It really, really narrows down the location where we can place this house. And I can't remember back then who the commissioner was, but there was talk about, yeah, it's up on the screen now. There's talk about, putting the house where some of the trees were. And one of the commissioners said that, and I agree, that there's really, the constraints are so great on the site, there's really no good place that wouldn't require a variance or some other type of mitigating measure. So this is the best site to put it, with honoring the setbacks and the slope and the drainage reserve. The drainage reserve running right through the center really cuts the property in half, and we had to honor that as well. So like I mentioned, I can't recall what sheet it's on. It's a site plan. That would be a 1 point there. Yeah, a 1.1 site. So the additional tree that I think, if there is an additional tree, is tree number 27. I don't believe that was shown exactly on the first. We'd have to compare these, but I think that was the only additional tree that may have been marked for removal from the first planning commission.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So tonight, what we'd like to do, because this is basically sort of like the phase 1 envelope. We would like to get it approved because the creek side setback and the Fish and Wildlife Review did not have any impact, and the envelope and the footprint and the size of the house is exactly the same. I believe we're a little bit shorter now because we changed from a pitched roof to a single sloping roof, but that will be reviewed in design review. So I'm asking for an approval and to move forward with phase 2 design review, and then it has to come back to planning commission for approval. Yeah, you can see in the east elevation the dotted, the dashed line showing the phase 1 approved building envelope. And as you can see, we changed that to a single slope roof. So that was really the major change, if you want to call it, in the house. But we're sort of having the cart before the horse, in that we're looking at only a building envelope at this point. Technically, we needed to go much further to satisfy the planning commission prior, but this is still a building envelope approval. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions of the applicant? Okay, so at this time we will open public comment on this item.
If you would like to comment on this item, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen, or press *9 on your phone. So far, no raised hands.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll, I guess we'll, Commissioner
If you
Radnich?
would, they're starting to come in now. I believe Mr. Peter Contaneo.
Chair, there's also a question in the question and answer box feature at the bottom. I don't know if that's how we're accepting comments, but just heads up.
And I think I think the questioner is one of the commenters now. I think Greg just read off his name.
I'll go ahead and let them into the meeting.
Will do.
Hi, Peter, you're in the meeting. If you'd like to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and talk.
I can. I've been promoted. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think I know there are other people who have comments. I don't know what the mechanical issues are. One of the, of course, core issues here, which Commissioner Sturm brought up, is the question about the trees. And as far as I could tell, looking, the arborist report was not provided as part of the package of materials, so we haven't had a chance to review that. When will that arborist report be available?
Apologies. So this had gone through several hearings and iterations, and so that was previously part of an original packet. And I believe I linked it in the staff report attachments, but I'll double check on that. And if not, certainly I can make it available on the website and/or find the link right now.
Because just as a comment, which I'd like to make on behalf of myself, I'm a resident of Tanglewood Drive, basically one lot beyond what's shown in the map there. The size of the proposed residence is really out of scale with the surrounding houses in the neighborhood. It's wildly out of scale with the lot, which is substantially smaller than what is a normal approved lot in Lafayette. And so I would urge the commission in looking at this to consider, the previous application, to put it bluntly, 3,800 square feet, 33 feet high, was, as realtors locally described it to me, simply an attempt to show something completely unreasonable. So when they came back with something which was merely too big for the neighborhood, it would be much more reasonable than the original application back whenever that was, 2015, 16. And even at 2,400 square feet, it's still significantly larger than, for example, the house right next to it. And I think so that's a major concern in the community, is the size and the character, and that's something that's easily, as the applicant just described, if you actually take the constraints on the property, I don't think you can build anything on it. And so it's a big ask for the commission to approve something that isn't really supporting the size of building done. And we'd urge you to at least bring it back into conformance with the neighboring houses to the extent possible. I have one other comment. I'll keep it very short, but the engineering issues in building in a creek, a lot of the diagrams that have been shown, I think, are unrealistic. They don't show how steep the hillside is there. If you walk the property between the house and the road, try walking it. It's too steep to walk as a normal person. And any construction there is going to create all kinds of significant potential adverse impacts. And as the extent of events grows with the actions of climate change, I would hope the city would ensure that there's no liability for the rest of the community if they put in inadequate construction that causes damage to the road. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Okay. Do we have any other public comments?
We do. Go ahead and admit.
Letting in Mr. Well, the abbreviation is Candle 03, I believe.
If you could please state your full name and address, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Candle 03.
Are you
we
talking
can't-
me? Oh, hi. Oh, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're on, and if you could give us your full name and address, and then you have 3 minutes to share your comments.
Okay. Okay. Yes. My name is Ellen Anderson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. My name is Ellen Anderson. My address is 1 Tanglewood Place. I'm just up the hill from the proposed development. Okay. Most of the Tanglewood residents have objected to this project with this applicant for over 4 years and prior applicants before that. All prior applicants have withdrawn their applications. I have filed many objections over the years, and you have a huge file to review. I direct you to the Homeowners Association memo dated May 24th, 2017 from Linda Guggens, which I attached to my comments dated August 17th, when the last meeting was scheduled. This project fails on all fronts. This parcel was never intended to be built. Again, this is a substandard lot of only 17,710 square feet and below the 120-foot minimum depth. 2,400 square feet house is too large for this substandard. 2,451 square foot house is too large for this substandard lot. The surrounding homes are 2,000 square feet on regular lots. All the trees are protected and should not be removed. Removing these trees will ruin the neighborhood. Construction mitigation is not sufficient. The siting blocks traffic on an S-curve, causing public safety issues. Construction on this project would block and damage Tanglewood Drive, a private road, the only entrance and exit to the neighborhood. Construction of new homes these days is taking well over a year and are being delayed further because of COVID issues, getting permits approved, et cetera, et cetera. This project will ruin the views of several homes and damage the aesthetics of the neighborhood and lower property values. The street is named Tanglewood Drive for a reason. There are many trees which form a canopy. The trees set the tone of this beautiful neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Sorry, the speaker. Okay. All right, thank you. Do we have any other public comment?
What about Rory?
Checking.
What happened to Rory?
There are no other folks who have raised their hand by pressing the raise hand function at the bottom of their screen or pressing *9. Now we have.
Yeah, Rory was going to.
Some are coming on and then going back off. And when they're off, they don't appear on. Mr. Snyder, Rory Snyder, has now raised his hand and left it raised. He's being promoted now. Mr. Snyder, you're part of the hearing. Please go ahead and unmute yourself and offer your comment.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Rory Snyder, 768 Tanglewood Drive, directly across the street from the proposed building house. And I agree with comments made by our neighbors. I'm also concerned about some other things. If the construction is going to take a year, is there any way that you can guarantee there will be 24/7 access to emergency vehicles for the whole Tanglewood Association, all the homes above where we are? I think that's a major problem. Another problem is that I've just read through very quickly a lot of the pages, and it says public notification has been supplied, but I've only received one letter this whole time. And I was present at last year. I'm on an architecture review committee. And you can see, since there's only 3 of us on this meeting, when there should be 20, we're not getting enough notification to get all our views out. And I want to ask about page 1 of Exhibit A draft says, a creek setback exception application shall be applied for prior to submittal of a phase 2 hillside development permit application. Has that been done?
Yes, it has.
You have that plan submitted already?
Correct. The city council approved creek setback exception.
Okay. Okay, and the next one is regarding, we're all concerned about the how the neighborhood's going to look when that goes in. I understand a few of you have driven by. We've been looking at these poles and flags for a long time, and they're very, very high, very visible, and a house there, as Ellen said, won't work. There's been at least 4 or 5 previous owners that have submitted plans. They've all been refused or withdrawn. Taking out that number of trees won't work. I thought the number was even up to 20, but if 12, if it's a protected tree, then we can't take it out. I just think there's way too many things that aren't working for this. And if it does get approved, then it goes to our architectural review committee. And we have, in some cases, more severe regulations regarding setbacks. And that's the reason some of the other ones haven't been approved. So that's all I have right now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Snyder. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Any other public comment?
Sandra McCandless is joining to offer her comment. Ms. McCandless, go ahead and offer your comment.
Yes. Well, I note that Mr. Massano himself said, he referenced the constraints on the site, and other neighbors have mentioned the fact that proposals to build on that site have been turned down for a great many reasons over the years. Those reasons have not changed. One point that hasn't been made yet tonight is that I noticed in the staff planning report, there's a statement, safety after construction. Once constructed, the neighborhood would need to drive slowly and cautiously. That's a safety red flag. Nowhere in the materials do I see any response at all to that. So I, in particular, want to note that the materials are replete with reasons why this is problematic. And one of the neighbors mentioned Linda Guggen's statement that was provided in writing May 24th, 2017. In particular, I ask you to look at that again. And I have a question, which is that I saw a reference in the materials to indemnity by the TAMs running in favor of the city. I'm not sure exactly how that works, and I'd like someone to address that in the event that there's a lawsuit. Are the TAMs expected to indemnify the city? Given all of the concerns that have been expressed, I'd like that addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, that concludes the public comments. There are no additional individuals who have raised their hand by either pressing the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen or pressing *9 on your phone.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, at this time, Mr. Misano, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal and to address any of the public comment that you'd like to do.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll just go down the list as I was writing them down. The arborist report, as Sarah had mentioned, the arborist report has been on file for several years now. It hasn't changed. Whether or not it was submitted this time, I mean, I know I submitted it, whether or not it got part of the materials. I don't know if it's really material. I'll admit that I was wrong. I had said I thought tree 27 was removed this time, but was not shown as being removed on the first approval. Well, it was. So I don't know of any additional trees that were removed in our current proposal. The lot size versus house size. We had an exhibit that was required by the first planning commission meeting to compare all the lot sizes, the percentage, the floor area ratios of all the surrounding houses, and they found that it was in keeping with the floor area ratios and the house sizes. There's some houses that are much larger. There are some houses that are smaller. There's some lots that are much larger. There are some lots that are smaller. So we are within keeping of the house size to the lot. Creekside approval was done. It was done correctly, submitted, reviewed by the city engineer, heard at the city council meeting, and approved. So that all the questions regarding the Creekside setback, if there were additional concerns, that was the time to raise the concerns, but we did follow the conditions of approval for that, as well as go through the Department of Fish and Wildlife. The HOA review, this lot was never intended for a house. Well, that item was addressed by Sarah at the very beginning. It is a lot of record. The removal of trees, yes, some trees have to be removed. Just because there's a tree on the lot does not mean it cannot be removed. There's mitigating trees that are being planted. And I am sure that some other houses on Tanglewood had to remove some trees to put their house on there. Traffic, there is an existing 15-mile-an-hour sign coming down Tanglewood about, I don't know, 100 yards before our driveway, before the curve, but even after the curve, 15 miles an hour. We're not changing that in any way, shape, or form. The driveway location was reviewed by the first city engineer, Tony Coe, and deemed in the correct place to access this lot, and was approved by the city, the planning commission prior. About blocking traffic, we were required to have a construction plan. We submitted it. It was reviewed a couple of times. There had been some responses to comments done. We resubmitted it, and it's part of this package now. We understand that we cannot offload or block the materials. There's a sequence of construction that will occur to enable the house to be built totally within the property. There was a comment, I believe, about the architectural review board had more strict requirements of setbacks. That's a legal matter that I cannot speak to. Maybe Sarah can chime in on that one after I'm done. Notifications, I'm sure that Sarah and the city had made all the notifications required. Otherwise, we would have not have been agendized. Prior plans withdrawn or not approved. I can attest to that's the truth because I was one of the applicants for a prior owner, Dino Reggio, on this. As far as going back before that, I'm not sure. The lot has been sold several times. This is just the most current application, and we have the right, the owners have the right to develop within the rules and regulations of the city of Lafayette for this lot of record. Site constraints, we went through that. Yes, it is a constrained lot. This went through several meetings with the Planning Commission. We reviewed it. It was agreed that the place that we have located the site is the appropriate site. It was reviewed, questioned, analyzed, everything. So this is the place that we had approved, and it has not changed. And remember, this meeting is for the purpose of verifying that the envelope was not affected by the Fish and Wildlife or the Creekside setback application, and it was not. Driving safely, yes, the neighbors and everybody should always drive safely. The indemnification, I believe, and Sarah can speak to this as well, I believe that the indemnification clause is a standard application clause that the owners sign to hold the city, to indemnify the city. So those are my comments in my rebuttal period. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Great, thank you, Mr. Musano. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, great. So we will bring it back to the commission now. Anybody would like to share their thoughts on the project? Commissioner Radnich?
Thanks, Chair. Sarah, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second. So in the public comment, we heard a couple themes. One was concern about the noticing process. One was related to fire and emergency access. And one was related to kind of potentially compromising the road. So engineering that could affect the road. So can you just let us know the city's process that the city goes through in terms for noticing and for reaching out to other departments for feedback, for example, for emergency access and for engineering?
Sure. So public notification is required within 300 feet of the subject property. And then it's required 10 days prior to the public meeting. Posting as well within 300 feet, 3 different locations. That was done for the first scheduled meeting, which was the last Planning Commission meeting, which actually got canceled due to lack of quorum. So I believe it was done, I can pull it up specifically, but it was definitely done before the required timeframe.
August 17th.
I'm sorry?
August 17th meeting?
Was the previous meeting, correct. So it was done 10 days before that. And then in terms of, we rely on other experts. The planners aren't the entire experts. So we refer out the project and application to the city engineer, the fire district, the sanitary district, all of our standard referral agencies. And if they have any comments or questions or concerns with the project, they provide those to us that we can then either request modifications to the project or include as conditions of approval.
Okay, thanks. And did you receive input from all of the departments you reached out to, specifically fire and engineering?
Certainly engineering, and we went through a couple of rounds of iterations with that. It's been a minute since I've looked at the project, but I can pull up the file and see what fire district said.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Heising?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I was on the commission back in 2017 when this project was approved, and I'm glancing at the resolution. It was approved unanimously, and I can say from my experience, hearing the number of comments and the deliberation we went through at the time, it was acknowledged that this was a very constrained site, And yes, in order to build something here, you're going to need to remove trees. And as the applicant mentioned, there's a process by which you mitigate for any tree removal. And there was very thoughtful consideration for, looking at that constraints map and looking at the topography, looking at the drainage. I don't believe it's a seasonal creek. I think it's just a drainage swell. I even think the Fish and Game permit calls it a drainage, even though it's a 1601 permit, but it's when I looked at it in the materials, it was called a drainage swale. They characterized it. So, we looked at the best place for it, and we considered all the trees there. It is heavily treed, so it does shield the project quite well. And just to address some of the comments I heard in the first commenter regarding engineers being able to design on a slope, I've lived in homes in the Oakland Hills, which are designed on very steep slopes, and there's ways to drill piers in a manner to be able to build on steep slopes. So I believe that's a concern. As far as construction access in speaker 3, there was a comment about not blocking Tanglewood, and I believe in the materials presented in the packet, there's an exhibit that shows locations of worker vehicles, as well as even I saw an outline of a cement truck. So there's locations set aside for construction vehicles to be during construction. The setback comment, I'd also like to hear an answer on that. And maybe Sarah, you can talk a little bit more. I just want to understand any setbacks required of the city that help make up that constraints map where we so thoughtfully placed the home. I just am wondering if there are setbacks that this architect review board for the community, if they're more restrictive than the city setbacks. I guess in general, I support this phase, reapproving the phase 1. As the applicant mentioned, nothing's changed since I voted yes to approve it 3 years ago. I would vote to support it tonight if my fellow commissioners agree with me. So I'll just leave it at that.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Heising. Vice Chair Farsan?
Yeah, I just wanted to get confirmation. So this is a private road, right? Privately maintained?
Correct.
And the reason I ask is that obviously we had comments about, potential effects on the road, et cetera, but those are issues that are gonna be figured out by the people who are maintaining that road, not by us, the city.
And this is a common issue that comes up in Lafayette, and
Absolutely.
Homeowners and their legal counsel know how to resolve or to deal with it. I'll just, while the rest of you are thinking about what you might want to say, I wanted to add a few things. In terms of safety issues, I think the issues with sight lines are common when you have winding roads and changes in elevation. And I don't think that's something you can hold against the development. There's no requirement to be able to see through a site to another part of the road. And then sort of piggybacking on what Vice Chair Farsan just mentioned, the concerns that some neighbors have expressed about access during construction. If any issues with construction come up anywhere around the city, you can contact city offices, I think probably in code enforcement, department, you can find that link on the website, and the city will go out there and meet with the contractor or the owner and resolve whatever issues you're seeing. When projects under construction, they have to keep to our times of construction and to the plan that they've submitted as part of their application. So I know that that's understandably a concern, and the good news is we have a way to resolve any issues that come up. And then removing protected trees is not an uncommon occurrence. It's something that the city and the commissions work very hard with the applicant to try to avoid, if at all possible. But on many sites, it's not possible to avoid removing every single tree. And as the applicant talked about, the remediation measures are always required, and they're in place here in the landscape plan. And I'll stop there and give Commissioner Maggio and Commissioner Mason and LaBonge a chance to chime in with their thoughts or comments.
Okay,
Commissioner Maggio?
thank you, Chair. Well, I think as the applicant said, this is a legal lot of record. And in Lafayette, an owner is allowed economic use of the property, i.e. development. But that development has to be appropriate within the constraints of the property itself. I reread some of the comments from the Design Review Commission, and a lot of the commissioners were working on to reduce the size of the property. And in fact, it has come down at least 1,000 square feet from the original design. Now, I know what our charge is this evening is basically to reapprove phase 1 that the Planning Commission unanimously approved 3 years ago because due to an expiration. So I'm prepared to do that this evening, but I really am looking forward to this project going back to DRC to see what else they can do to save trees, further reduce and refine the design of this project. But tonight I can make the findings to reapprove phase 1.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Maggio. Commissioner Mason?
I also can make the findings to reapprove it. I see no reasons why. I always try and give deference to previous planning commissions. I see no reason why we should revisit things that they thoroughly discussed. 2 items. One is I know Traverso Tree Service. They have been in this area for a very, very, very long time. I have utmost confidence in their ability. And 2, the big item to remember is this, it is a legal lot. Subtracting out the garage, it gives about 2,000 square feet of living area, which is, reasonable for the area and at the lower end of what we are seeing as far as houses and additions, coming before us. So to ask them to go much lower than that, I think would be unreasonable. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Commissioner LaBonge?
I'm glad that I sometimes feel frustration for the public commenters who ask things and they don't get answered. And I feel like as a commission tonight, we've done a really good job answering them, and most of it's been answered. There's nothing I have that hasn't been said. I feel this legal lot of record, we've dealt with this group on this commission. We've dealt with this a lot, and it's frustrating because the people who live there feel like something's getting jammed down their throat, and we're following the charge that we're given. So I think we've done a good job trying to, in other projects where we've had to mitigate more, we've provided guidance. This one, I think we're reestablishing it, and I too feel that I don't see any reason to change what was already approved. This is a phase 1. A phase 2 will come. More's been done for this phase 1, than really should be. It should just be truly a building envelope, like a block. This has been, for aesthetic reasons, designed a little more. I actually appreciated the Mr. Masano's response and going through everything. On the lot size versus house size, when I looked at the site, I took pictures of neighboring houses, and I have them on my iPad just to remind myself, because that was for the previous meeting. And we've seen this as well. It's very difficult to be able from the street to really gauge size and is this bigger, because I saw one house that looked smaller. I saw one house very close that looked much larger from my mind of what we're going to see. And so I think I would agree that this isn't not, I don't think this is going to be out of sync with the rest of the sizing. You can't always tell. It might be very narrow and very deep. It might be very wide and very shallow. You can't tell that from the street. So I don't see an issue there. The construction staging, I think during the phase 2, that will be addressed. I understand why that's a concern, but I think those will all be addressed. So I'm ready to support it. And I'm glad we're trying to actively answer these questions so that people don't feel like we are just moving things through. That's all I have.
Great, thanks. Okay, and then I'll just add to my previous comments that as a reapproval, I am in support of the projects because conditions have not changed. Having substandard lots that the rest of the neighborhood had understood could not be developed is probably something that's going to keep happening in Lafayette. And I have to admit, I don't always, I guess there's some level of discomfort, but I think that we're following the rules, we're following the fact that it's a lot of record and finding the best solution possible. Looking at this project with fresh eyes, I had some issues with the tree removal just because it's a large part of the character of the site. But I have confidence too in the arborist report, and that the remediation will sort of reestablish the character as a wooded site with this house nestled within it. I also think that one of the less than ideal aspects of the project is that the front of the house is facing a side yard or the side of another lot, which I think is usually not what we would want for privacy issues. But I trust that, I can see that landscape screening has already been thought about and is being proposed. And I trust that the Design Review Commission will look at that issue more completely. And then the other thing that sort of struck me, and I have some concerns about it, is that the house, I don't have any issues with the size of the house or this beginning design. I think that's as good as it can be, and I don't think the size is too large for the site. And the height has been mitigated by the house sitting lower in the ravine. But I do have concerns that, and maybe this is just something that goes in the notes for the DRC to think about and make their own decision on. But I worry that with the house sort of looking sunken from the street and looking at the side of the house, whereas in typical lot configurations, you're looking at the front of the house, I'm a little concerned that that's going to look odd in the neighborhood and maybe have an impact on the character of the neighborhood. I don't know there's anything that we can necessarily do about that, but I just wanted to make those comments. I think that's all that I have. Okay, so if no one else has additional comments, then Commissioner Heising, sorry.
Yes, this is a question for Sarah, just specific to condition of approval 4. I remember when this came up because we were concerned about the drainage swale, and we specifically asked the applicant to talk to Fish and Wildlife, and which any of you who've worked on permitting around a creek know that that's very onerous, more so than even dealing with the creek structure setback. So the council approved the setback. and this was written into the commission. The planning commission will evaluate the project and determine if any modifications are required as a result of project comments from Department of Fish and Wildlife or the city council as it relates to the creek structure setback. So my question to Sarah is, we asked for phase 2 to come back because we wanted to make sure that that we had a chance to comment on it if there were requirements of Fish and Wildlife that necessitated the footprint to be moved. And in this case, that's not. And council already approved the setback. So my question is, do we really have to see phase 2, or can we rely on design review to do their job and do the without phase 2 coming back to us? Can we modify condition of approval 4 is what I'm asking.
Certainly, I think I absolutely, you can do that.
Okay. So then I would recommend, Chair, that, I mean, unless all of us want to get into details of design review, how this house looks, or I personally would rather leave that for design review commission. As far as I remember, that was the only reason we were asking for it to come back phase 2 to see it before it went to design review hearings. So I would recommend that we modify that condition in the motion so that it doesn't necessarily come back to us before going to design review.
Okay. I'm looking for the,
So actually, I'll just clarify that, in fact, sort of part of this hearing is essentially that, like establishing that you're confident and comfortable that it hasn't changed based on those other agencies' review. So essentially we're complying with condition 4 at this point. But I hear you in that you are proposing that we don't bring it back after design review, that design review is the final action.
Correct.
so Sarah, you don't think it necessitates what Commissioner Heising's saying, doesn't necessitate a change in the condition, the way condition 4 is written?
Correct. And perhaps it's
So
just like 2 separate motions, maybe that one that is reapproving phase 1 with the existing conditions, and then the second motion being that you find it consistent and with condition 4.
Phase 2 condition.
That makes sense too.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Radnich?
So before we make a motion, I also noticed the resolution references the August 17th meeting date. The top of our packet does say that it was revised for today's meeting on September 8th, but do we need to add anything into our motion regarding today's date?
I will make those edits as part of the resolution. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thanks.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion? Commissioner Heising?
Yes, I move that we approve staff recommendation as written in the staff report. What's the reso number? Sorry.
I think it's 2018.
There we go. That we adopt Planning Commission Resolution 2020-18, and that we deem we have met, or what's the correct wording, that we've met the intent of condition of approval 4 by conducting this hearing prior to the item going to design review.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Mason. And we will take a vote. Vice Chair Farsan,
Aye.
Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Labange,
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio,
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Mason. Okay, got Commissioner Labange, Commissioner Maggio, Commissioner Mason,
Aye.
Commissioner Radnich,
Aye.
and Commissioner Sturm, aye. Okay, so then do we still need one more motion? Or was that complete?
I think Commissioner Heising incorporated it into his motion.
Okay. Okay, that closes item 6A. We'll move on to item 6B, General Plan 01-20, City of Lafayette General Plan 2040, Updated General Plan 2040 Project Kickoff, Stakeholder List, General Plan Advisory Committee, Housing Element, and Draft Timeline. We're ready for a staff report.
Good evening, commissioners and the public. The planning staff is excited to present an update on the General Plan 2040 update for you tonight. Next slide, please. So tonight we will be reviewing some requested actions from the commission. We'll be introducing the project team working on the general plan update. We'll be providing an overview of the general plan and the update process. We will also be discussing our project kickoff strategy and the general plan advisory committee recruitment and selection process, the project timelines, and staff expectations and communication. Next slide, please. Tonight, we are looking for the commission to provide feedback on the general plan update process and timeline, as well as nominate a planning commission liaison and an alternate to the general plan advisory committee. Next slide. We'd like to take a moment to introduce the team working on the general plan update. We've branded ourselves as the Core Four. So we have Senior Planner Nancy Tran, myself Renata Robles, Assistant Planner Jonathan Fox, and Senior Planner Sarah Allen. So please feel free to direct your questions to any and all of us if any come up in the future. So as a refresher for the commissioners as well as the public, each jurisdiction is required to have a current general plan with a minimum of the 7 element topics at the top of your screen. And housing is the only element that's required by the state with its own deadline and is required to be reviewed by the state Housing and Community Development Department. At the bottom, you will see some new and optional elements that have been added since the 2002 general plan was updated. And through the public engagement process, as well as the General Plan Advisory Committee or GPAC, we will determine which elements are appropriate to include in our projected planning. Next slide, please. So this graphic is intended to demonstrate our approach to the public process. So we hold the public and all of our stakeholders at the top, and their lived experience and input will be the basis for our approach to this update. So we are trying to cast as wide a net as possible to include everyone in this process. And that includes folks who live here, folks who will live here, individuals who own businesses or work in the city, and those who visit as well. And working between the City Council and the public will be the General Plan Advisory Committee. So this is an entirely volunteer-based group that will synthesize the public input and put forward recommended policies and programs for the council to then adopt into the final general plan. So throughout this process, city staff will be coordinating and facilitating public events like surveys, workshops, charrettes, to kind of draw that information out and then turn it into tangible action and strong policies to move forward. Next slide, please. So our project kicked off last month in August with the City Council reviewing the General Plan Advisory Committee's composition. And then we are here tonight with the Planning Commission to receive more feedback. We've officially launched a dedicated general plan website at planlafayette.org, which is going to be a hub of information and updated frequently for the public and any other interested parties to learn about different ways to get involved, review the resources that we're looking at, such as specific plans, the old general plans, as we update our approach to planning for the city, as well as many other things, including the General Plan Advisory Committee application, which Jonathan will touch on later. And finally, as part of this kickoff, we are starting our recruitment for GPAC with here tonight, the General Plan Advisory, the Planning Commission, looking for a nomination, as well as doing stakeholder outreach to nonprofits, businesses, community groups, to try and garner interest in participation. And we'll be doing this through an extensive contact list where we have individuals identified from different groups to kind of do targeted outreach and try and get applicants, as well as doing broad blasts through direct mailings and on the city social media web pages. So next, Jonathan Scott will provide more, or Jonathan Fox will provide more information on the General Plan Advisory Committee.
Thank you. So after a few meetings with the City Council and the City Council Planning Subcommittee, we determined that GPAC is to consist of 13 members, 11 of which are voting members, and then 2 additional non-voting liaisons, 1 from the Planning Commission, 1 from the City Council. Of those 11 voting members, several of them are to come from our existing institutions. So 1 representative from PTR, TransCirc, Youth, and Senior Services Commissions, and also a representative from the Chamber of Commerce representing downtown interests. To fill out those other spots on GPAC, we'll be accepting applications, which are currently being accepted on our website. We'll be accepting applications for positions to represent the geographic areas of Lafayette. So the 4 districts that we're calling them are the Happy Valley and Acalanes Valley combined area, downtown, Release Valley, and Burton Valley. We'll also have a member representing the city at large. And then finally, we'll select at random 1 nonprofit organization to represent nonprofit interests, and then they can select one of their own members to sit on GPAC. So this is something that we're fully immersed in already. As I mentioned, the website, we're currently accepting applications. We've already received 1 application for a member to serve on GPAC. We have 3 of the positions already filled. So representing PTR is Carol Singer, representing TransCirc is Richard Craig, and our City Council liaison is Teresa Geringer, and the alternate on City Council is Susan Kendall. Again, application is live on planlafayette.org. It's a digital application that you can fill out on your device. And for any folks that either don't have access to a computer or just want to fill out a physical application, they can call us, they can call the planning department, and we will mail them an application directly. Applications will be accepted through October 2nd. So we started accepting applications in August, and from August to October 2nd, that'll be about 6 weeks. Applications will close on October 2nd, and on October 5th, we will hold a lottery drawing to randomly select representatives for the district, the at-large position, and the nonprofit representative, and that'll be live on the city's YouTube channel. So it's a lot of information, and we plan on holding 2 information sessions to go over this information, to talk about GPAC, to talk about the application process. First meeting is this Thursday, September 10th, and we'll have another meeting a couple weeks later on September 24th. So for anyone that's interested in applying or has questions about applying, they can certainly visit those meetings and ask questions, or they can send us an email at generalplan@lovelafayette.org. So one of the 2 things that we're asking the commission this evening is to nominate one of their own to serve as a liaison. And it's important to note that that role, it is certainly very, very important, but that will be a non-voting member. So the expectation is that the representative will attend the meetings, participate in discussions, and report back to the commission on GPAC activities, but again, is a non-voting member. We have a few key timelines looking ahead. So in 2022, we'll have adopted a zoning change to upzone the BART-owned properties for compliance with AB 2923, which requires the city to upzone those properties to allow for higher densities. Also in 2022, we'll send the housing element to the state, as Renata mentioned. It's the only element that needs to be reviewed and approved by the state. And then looking several years into the future, we expect the city council to adopt the final general plan in 2025. Lastly, wanted to touch on what the flow of information in meeting holding is. On a weekly basis, the Core 4 meets every Wednesday to talk about things that we need to be working on. That's once a week. We expect to have monthly meetings for GPAC, less, maybe more, depending on the activities we have planned and also depending on the topics of discussion. Also on a monthly basis, we've been updating the city manager and planning director, and we'll continue to do that. And then we'll be presenting to the city council and to you, the planning commission, as needed. Thank you very much for listening. Again, there's 2 items that we are looking for. We're requesting feedback on the process and timeline, and also we're asking the planning commission to nominate one of their own to serve as the liaison, and also to select an alternate just in case that liaison cannot make it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan, Renata. That was a great presentation. Appreciate all the work you put into that. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Heising?
Yes, thank you for that presentation. And I'll echo the chair's comments. Good presentation. You just got 4 years of more effort to go, though. I guess it's going to be a long journey. But can you pull up Jonathan? Can you pull up that one slide showing the members that council weighed in on, as far as who all makes up GPAC? So that last bullet, I think it's the last one, one Chamber of Commerce representative. Is that a chamber staff person, or is that a business owner?
That I think is expected to be a business owner, but it's going to be selected by the chamber itself. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That I just wanted to clarify that. I think it's good to get perspective. I mean, the chamber they definitely represent the businesses that are members, obviously. But I think a true business owner might offer a unique perspective that we would want to take advantage of. And then was there any consideration to a developer being on the GPAC to represent that perspective? Or did that come up in the conversations with council?
It did not. However, I think we certainly can either they are, or we can add them to our list of stakeholders. So I think there's 2 different elements. One is the GPAC, which is sort of the more formal committee or subcommittee, and then our stakeholder list, which we expect to be very involved throughout the process, and certainly will be kind of getting targeted outreach to on specific topics. So certainly that's a great point.
Okay, and then the only reason I bring it up is because we've had commissioners and developers team up on work plans and study sessions in the past, and as I mentioned with business owners, the developers offer their perspective as well that I think is worth considering when doing a GPA. You want to cast the net, as Renata mentioned, as wide as possible. And then just as far as timing, because timing and schedule was another thing you solicited our input on. I like how you laid out the simple bar chart schedule and tied it to 2025, which is our ultimate goal to get the GPA 2040 adopted. The interim timelines relative to the housing element, and more specifically the RENA numbers I read in the staff report, are we're expecting fall of 2020, which we are technically a little bit into September, into fall of 2020. So my question is, when are we going to get those numbers? Because that's a wide range in the staff report of 1,038 to 2,523. And I mean, just from what I'm hearing, it's going to be on the higher side. So I'm just curious to know what our requirements really going to be, and when is ABAG going to get that information out? Do you know?
Greg, has there been any update on that?
No, the Housing Methodology Committee, I believe on the 18th, next Friday, has an obligation to approve a methodology, which would then move forward to the ABAG governing board. So the draft number allocations have not come out. I would expect it to be somewhere in the middle and not either at the high end or the low end, but they're still working on it. So this fall, I believe the draft number will come out, and then the final number next year.
Okay, thank you. And then my last comment is just more of a suggestion. Back to the theme of casting the net as wide as possible and get as most interest, well, as much interest as you can get people in a general plan update. For residents when they're driving through that intersection, our busiest intersection at Montalbano and Moraga, there's that sign at Safeway. If we can sneak some sort of notification on there that lets the community know, because this is huge. I mean, a general plan update does not come around that often, and when we do it, we want to do it right, especially the housing element, because I know there's been many comments over projects that we've approved, we, the commission and the council, have approved, that have generated quite a bit of interest. So that's the element in the general plan that's going to affect our future and how this city looks. So residents really need to pay attention and understand how important this is. So just as many people we can notify as possible is great. So thank you. And again, great staff report.
Thanks, Commissioner Harrison. Good comments and questions. I think there were a couple other hands raised. Commissioner or Vice Chair Farsan.
Thank you. So great presentation. I totally agree with that, putting that together. Jonathan, would you mind going back to that slide that Commissioner Heising just brought up about the representatives, please? So two questions, and I don't know, is there a reason that Happy Valley and Akalani's Valleys were combined and they were not separate geographic districts? I just don't know the answer to that.
Certainly. So we had originally proposed, similar to the city manager interview selection process, combining Akalani's Valley and downtown. And council members provided feedback that they felt Akalani's and downtown were too different in character to be combined and represented by one person on GPAC. And so we considered creating a separate seat for an Acalanes Valley representative, but staff had concerns that there would be outsized representation due to the number of households in Acalanes Valley alone. And so the compromise was that Happy Valley and Acalanes Valley are more similar in character and proximity, and there's overlap with the school district or school attendance between those two. So it was determined to combine them. And further, we received the suggestion from Mary Anderson to seek out an odd number of GPAC members as a tiebreaker. So that was some of the thinking that went behind that.
Thanks, that's helpful. So then, were the geographic areas divided by households, number of people in those households, or geographic size?
Greg, do you want to hop into that?
I don't know that it was based on an actual population count in each quadrant of the city. Rather, I think when the city manager interview process was contemplated, you know, the freeway certainly bisects the city north-south, and there are essentially 4 valleys that the community knows as neighborhoods, and then the downtown. And so trying to balance all of the issues and interests, the council could have had one more district and Acalanes Valley by itself. I believe that has the fewest number of residents, and so thus the concern about it having an outsized representation. And then Renata spoke to the sort of the both areas attend the same schools, et cetera. So that was the direction from the council, but we haven't done a population count and districted in that fashion.
Great, thanks. That's super helpful. And then, so a follow-up kind of to what Commissioner Heising was asking with respect to the chamber representative and then the downtown. So if the chamber representative is going to be a business owner, which I hope they are, I agree with Commissioner Heising, it'd be good to have somebody who's actually in business to give their viewpoint instead of being a representative of the chamber, but obviously up to them. Does that mean that the downtown representative will be a citizen, not a business owner, or is it just somebody who's in the downtown and we pick them out of a hat because they put their name in? Does that make sense?
Certainly. So the 4 districts are, those seats are available to residents in those districts. And then the at-large member, so we will be doing a lottery drawing for those 4 districts. Everyone who's not selected from those pools will be put into the at-large, which is a combination of those who live in Lafayette and those who work in Lafayette. So anybody that lives or has a business in Lafayette, whether or not they're a member of the chamber, can put their name in the hat for the at-large seat. But the intention for the districts is those are residents who have a specific experience at that location.
Great. That was my last question. Thanks very much.
Greg?
Sure. And I just wanted to make it clear to anyone out there that while we are seeking representatives in the categories and geographic areas shown, it is not, the goal is to incorporate as many voices as possible. And so it has been commonplace for while there might be a limited number of representatives in a voting capacity on a given task force or committee, that members of the public, business owners, et cetera, participate in the meetings and attend, and their voices are given just as much weight as someone who is officially appointed. I don't recall in my experience with the current general plan, which was adopted nearly 20 years ago or subsequent to that, where an issue has really come down to a narrow vote. The majority, if not all of the decisions and policy discussions are done by majority consensus, and you know, there's not a vote taken until perhaps the end, where there's a vote to move the full summary document or elements forward. So I just want to invite people to participate, even if they are not selected as a quote voting member, unquote.
Great, thank you. Can't see the full commission. Any other commissioners have? I see Commissioner Maggio. Oh, you're still muted.
Got it. Thank
There
you.
you go.
I was really pleased to see that these meetings are going to be held on Zoom because I've been getting a lot of great feedback from people, particularly families, who don't want to come out at night when they're home with their children, but they are tuning in and they are taking part in more public meetings. So I think it's very critical for us going through this general plan process to really include as many people as possible. I remember the first round of the general plan over 20 years ago, public comment was so important. And so this just gives us one more way of people to contribute through public comment through Zoom and being more inclusive of our entire community. So hats off, glad that's incorporated.
Commissioner Radnich?
Yeah, one question. I think this is probably for Greg. What happens if, for example, the Burden Valley area does not receive any applications, or there's no applications received from anybody, just say in Burden Valley? Does the deadline get extended, or is your anticipation that, you know, multiple applications, or at least one, will be received from each district?
I believe we were anticipating at least one application from each district. The core four can speak to if we had contemplated a worst case scenario where we didn't. I would suggest if we haven't made a contingency for that it would just go to at large. I mean, we would certainly solicit in advance if the deadline is nearing and we haven't gotten a single application from a district, but so that would be my recommendation.
Okay, thanks. And then I guess the other thing I'd like to echo is a couple of the commissioners mentioned or, you know, asked for clarification on the Chamber of Commerce representative. I too would hope that it's an actual business owner. I think that would be a nice addition.
I can confirm that it will be a business owner, a chamber member, not staff.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Commissioner Mason? Commissioner Lavange? No? Okay. I don't really have anything to add either. I think that the framework that we're moving forward with is very thorough, and it looks like we've covered all of our bases with the stakeholders, and I think the composition of the GPAC should work well. I will say that my only concern, and you and the core four and Greg would know better than I would how applications usually look coming in. I mean, I know for some of our commissions, it's been sort of hard to get applications because of constraints with conflict of interest policies. But with this, I just think our community, I mean, I don't know if it's just my household, but the community is under a lot of stress with the pandemic and kids at home schooling and our red flag warnings and all of that. So it may be that people aren't seeing all the notifications. And I would think that it'd be pretty critical to make sure that we stick with the representatives that you guys have laid out rather than plug in at large members, because I think that's that's not a road that we want to go down. We want to make sure that you stick with your plan. So I guess my question would be, if we need to bump it back a couple of weeks, is that going to throw your long-term timeline off, or is there some wiggle room for that?
Oh, great questions. I don't think we had contemplated it because it's such an active and involved community that, everyone's gonna be so excited to do this, right? But if they're not, so I think we have the ability to see who has submitted an application. And so if we are seeing that we're not getting enough in advance of that deadline, I think we'll probably try and kind of do a little bit more targeted outreach. And then certainly we could always extend the timeline if necessary. We certainly want it to be an inclusive process, and we're not beholden to any other than the big picture deadlines, but we certainly can make that work.
And Jeff Heyman, I forgot what, if your staff report, if you said that you'd be putting it out on Facebook, like obviously on the city website, but then there's so many sub Facebook communities within Lafayette, like a diversity group and this side of town and family, long-running families. And is Jeff Heyman connected to some of those groups that like the diversity group? I've heard a lot of people talking about wanting to actively do things to influence the diversity in our city. So people that are already wanting to do more would be obviously more inclined to, I think, volunteer for a project like this.
I think that we have those folks on our stakeholder list, and certainly we can look into the Facebook side of things.
Okay, Commissioner Radnich.
This is a question for Jonathan and Sarah. So Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind pulling back up the schedule. And I was just hoping that one of you would be able to talk just kind of generally for the benefit of anyone from the public who's on this meeting. If you could discuss, so between now and 2025 sounds like a long time, but if you could just give a high level of why it appears to be 4 years, right? Like, why does a general plan update take 4 years? I'm not questioning it, just so that, people can better understand.
Certainly. So even just things like you mentioned, where it's like, did we get enough applicants and do we need to push it back a couple of weeks? Those all can impact the timeline as well. But big picture is that we're really trying to get, the community's input and understand their values on very specific things. And I think, as Jonathan mentioned, that the different elements or I guess it was Renata, the different elements, we're kind of tackling each of those somewhat individually, although they're somewhat interrelated. So housing, transportation, safety, those are all kind of big items, big things to tackle, right? So we have to look at the overall big picture, and then also the specific policies and programs that will be implemented in order to realize the vision that the community has established. So, and then also CEQA takes a long time, the environmental review, and then the public hearing process as well. So there's like all this background stuff, CEQA, and then the formal public process through Planning Commission and City Council.
Okay.
That's a good point. I think in that really cool triangle diagram that you guys make, I thought that was great. But it did show council at the bottom, but the planning commission will review prior to things going to council. Things will go through. Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, then we can move on to nominating someone to serve as our liaison to the GPAC. Vice Chair Farsan, you.
I was just saying, I think Greg was trying to say something.
Okay, sorry. Greg, go ahead.
And I thank you. Given the timing and the legitimate, concern about people's attention and time being focused elsewhere under current circumstances, but knowing that each of you has a community of friends and a social network, I would ask, this is your call to action, to put out to your network that the city is undertaking the general plan update and needs good people to participate, and that the deadline for applications is looming. So we shouldn't wait on that.
Good idea. Thank you. Vice Chair Farsan.
Yeah, so that's great. I was gonna follow up. So I put up the application, all the information on Nextdoor in my neighborhood, so to speak, and you can't really post it on others. So I would just suggest doing the same if you're on Nextdoor as a potential.
Good suggestion. Thank you. Okay, so back to the topic of our liaison. So Commissioner Rodnich and Commissioner Maggio have both expressed interest in serving on the GPAC. And given that Commissioner Maggio participated in the last general plan update, she expressed that she's happy to pass the torch, as they say, and serve as the alternate or backup liaison, and maybe even a resource to the primary liaison. So I just wanted to thank both of you for stepping forward in this chaotic time and committing to focusing on this big project. And so at this time, if I personally would support Commissioner Radnich serving as the primary liaison and Commissioner Maggio as the alternate. And if that is also agreeable to the rest of the commission, then we would just need a motion nominating them to those roles. Vice Chair Farsan.
So I would move to nominate Commissioner Radnich and Commissioner Maggio as the alternate.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Heising. We'll take a roll call vote. Vice Chair Farsan.
Aye.
Commissioner Heising.
Aye.
Commissioner Labange.
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio.
Aye.
Commissioner Mason.
Aye.
Commissioner Radnich.
Aye.
And Commissioner Sturm. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for stepping forward. This is it should be a big effort and a very rewarding subcommittee type experience. Okay, and in part, I think I don't know if staff spoke to this, but you'd be giving us updates, I guess, probably during the commissioner report period of our meetings following each of the GPAC meetings. So we look forward to those.
And if anybody does end up doing that sort of outreach, social media or Nextdoor or whatever, if you could just let us know so we can kind of keep track of, how the word has gotten out, so we can make sure that.
Sure, great.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Here we go. Okay, so that closes item 6B. We have no new public hearings. So we're on to item 8, other business. Our volunteer for September 18th. I'm happy to do it if no one else can, but I did it. I did it last time, although it was one item.
I can't do the 18th, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can do that. I haven't done it in a while.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay.
Question?
Yes, Commissioner LaBlanche.
Just for my memory, when we are doing the ARC, what is the actual time frame? Because I tend to have meetings Friday morning. That's why I've been missing it. What's the commitment?
Time frame for response.
Or what? How does it? Last time I did it was in person, so it's been a while.
It's sorry.
We set up ARC before COVID, and it's essentially a staff meeting where we invite one design review commissioner and one planning commissioner to vet and weigh in on applications that have come in and help the planning director route them to the most appropriate hearing body, potentially identify any issues up front. And so we were considering many past commissioners have been working in the city and elsewhere, have tried to skew it towards the beginning of the day or the end of the day, and thus a 9:15 start time has been traditional. Given that we are meeting via teleconference now, I think there's more flexibility, but Jonathan Fox is the planner who's coordinating ARC, and he can speak to that further.
So ARC has, since the shelter in place order went into place, we've been doing ARC by email. So when I have the commissioner on board, I send out the plans on Thursday night. And I usually say that getting these comments back within the next couple days or the next few days would be greatly appreciated. But because it's by email, there's no strict deadline when those need to come in.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, item 9, commissioners' reports. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share? Okay, I had a question. We received an email from Lisa Martin about the California League of Cities annual conference and expo, or maybe it was from Greg. Is that something that if we want to attend, we would register on our own, or is that something that Lisa Martin would register us for?
Either way, Lisa would be happy to register you, or you can do it on your own. And we do have a budget for commissioner training. So we have some monies available for that.
Okay. I think Commissioner, I don't know that I think I've only attended the thing in Sonoma. Commissioner Maggio, I thought you had sort of put in a plug for this previously.
Yeah,
Oh, you just muted yourself. Nope. Try it.
sorry.
There we go.
Yeah, I think it's really beneficial because you get kind of a 32,000 feet view over what some of the other cities are going through. And, you know, we all share very similar problems, and it helps build solutions as well. So it gets you out of your own little issues, and you can see what some of the bigger issues are and how people are handling them. Plus it's educational.
Okay. Commissioner Radnich?
Greg, when the email first came out, I thought it said that it was in person. And to me, that was the one thing that took away for me, that made me not interested. Is it actually an in-person conference, or is it virtual?
I'm going to check, but my recollection is that they moved it to virtual.
Okay. Maybe I didn't read that far in the email.
Yeah, I think it was virtual. I think I emailed asking about registering and somebody didn't get back to me, but I think Lisa's usually pretty responsive. So if we.
Where is it located? I mean, if it wasn't virtual.
I believe historically it's been in Sacramento.
Okay.
It does say it's virtual.
Yeah,
Okay.
Because I was going to say, I don't think Sacramento, they haven't gotten out of level 2 yet.
Yeah. Okay, I'll reread it. Thank you.
Okay. And the only other thing that I wanted to report on, and this isn't really, well, it's a little bit specific to the Planning Commission because we've gotten a briefing, but more of just sharing information to other citizens of Lafayette. If you didn't attend the City Council Safety Subcommittee Town Hall meeting on August 27th, it was really excellent. I feel like on, well, the terraces and maybe mostly the terraces, we got a sort of a nice overview of the fresh things that the fire department is doing this year, and the way that they're working together even more efficiently with the police department. So I felt like I had a basic understanding of that, but this town hall went beyond that into a lot of detail. And I don't remember his name, the main CERT, the person that, Greg, can you give me?
Duncan Seibert, who's
Duncan
the chair of the Emergency Preparedness Commission and the coordinator, director of La Miranda CERT, the Community Emergency Response Teams, training rather.
So he was on the call too. And so it was great. Like I felt like it fell during our last red flag warning. So I sitting there thinking, okay, like sort of, we need a refresher. And anyway, so I encourage everybody to listen to it or watch it if it's available on the YouTube channel. It's great.
It is available there, and I echo that recommendation. I made the same recommendation to planning staff if they weren't watching at the time. And what I think was gratifying to see and take away from that was that there were actionable items that folks in attendance watching could take away and go do. Whereas a lot of times a meeting or a seminar, it's high level and your takeaway is just conceptual and there's no actual action items that you can leave with.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, and so item 10, planning director's report.
Thank you. Kind of in keeping with attending that town hall, I attended a seminar put on by the League of California Cities on wildfire recovery. So not the emergency response in the moment, but what happens after that initial response, and you know, whether it's 2 weeks, 4 weeks. This was one of my critiques of it, was that there weren't specific actionable items that you could take. It was a little more general. I will be reaching out to some community development directors that have been affected by this in Northern and Southern California to get some of their resources, you know, shared. So one of the takeaways were, it is a long, long road to recovery. There's debris cleanup, and both on public property and private property. It is a multi-year effort. You know, record keeping and being able to get cost recovery if it's a declared emergency, et cetera. But there are things that we can be doing now as a department, as a city. We are very lean right now, but this is an area of particular personal interest and concern, both preventing wildfire to the degree we can, fuel management, and preparedness on the part of the community and every individual, but also on the recovery end as well. So we would be needing to call in, you know, county, regional, state resources, FEMA likely, but there are, you know, procedures and forms that we can put in place now. God forbid something were to happen. It's a good insurance policy. Two other planning application related matters. I think I mentioned previously the new home proposed on Quail Ridge Road, where the house was destroyed by a landslide about 20 years ago. That was approved by the Planning Commission. It was timely appealed and will be going to the City Council on September 28th. And the West End project, so adjacent to Sotheby's, between the city offices and the Veterans Memorial Building on the south side of the boulevard. This commission approved it. It went to, or rather recommended approval to the City Council. It was approved by the City Council, and there was a letter of intent filed to sue under CEQA. And the city has executed a tolling agreement with the two parties, and settlement talks are afoot. So hopefully the city can avoid being involved in another lawsuit on a private development. And that's all I had.
Okay, great, thank you for those updates. Okay, if there's nothing else, then we are adjourned. Thank you for a good meeting.
Good week, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Everyone.